Hello, everyone, and welcome to Christian Family Solutions Mindful Moments Part 4. We're so happy that you could join us for our very last edition. My name is Bree Grunwald. I am a community outreach representative at CFS, and we have a couple of housekeeping notes to share, and then we'll dive right in. The first is your audio and video have been muted, so any questions or comments that you have, please share that in the Q&A feature below. And then also, we will be having a short survey at the very end of our discussion today. So please take just a couple of moments and fill that out for us. So I would love to take a quick look at some additional information or resources rather that's available to you at CFS. Christian Family Solutions not only provides counseling care and senior services, but we also have a plethora of educational resources on our website that anyone can dig into. Our team of experts are dedicated to share their knowledge to you in both counseling care and senior services. If you've been learning and enjoying information from this educational presentation, Mindful Moments, then you're bound to find more. The team has a selection of previously recorded webinars, videos, downloadable toolkits and activities, blogs, recommended counseling apps, and information on how to schedule a tailored educational presentation for your specific group. That could be a school, church, community support network, whatever it may be. So why not dig into the experts that we have at Christian Family Solutions and their knowledge? Joining us today, we have all three of our experts returning. The first expert, we have Dr. Ashley Schoof. She is our Southeastern Wisconsin Clinical Director. Karen Fischer, Program Manager and Licensed Professional Counselor. And Jeremy Long, Licensed Professional Counselor. Thank you so much for joining me today, folks. Let's see here, I gotta flip on over. There we are. Awesome. So to give you guys a little bit of background, we asked all of our participants in the registration to ask any questions that they have for you guys that are just lingering from our previous episodes. And so we have combined many of the very, very thoughtful questions that were submitted, and we are going to do our absolute best to get through all of them. I don't know that we are going to be able to, but we will definitely do our best. So let's dive right in and do some rapid fire with questions. I am going to cover the very first one. And this was one that we actually got quite a bit. And it was, how can we watch the previous 3 Mindful Moments episodes? And so that you can find it underneath the resource tab that I had mentioned on Christian Family Solutions website. And that will be hosted there along with all of the other resources that I had mentioned just above. So Karen, we're going to jump on over to you. The first question is, what are the potentially long-term effects of loneliness or isolation in older adults, and how can we build resiliency?
Oh, great question. Working with older adults lately, I'll tell you what I'm noticing. And we did begin in the pandemic an actual group tailored towards this for this very reason, because we knew what would happen. It becomes very inward. I'm not connected to other people. I don't have the creative outlets I've had. I don't have community. And when that happens for people, they kind of go inward and they're not using the plasticity of their brain as much, and they're not thinking as well. And the executive functioning goes down, and the mood disorders come with that. And so sometimes it looks like anxiety, depression, confusion, and just limited capacity. So I think those are kind of common, but also probably a little more pronounced in the elder population. But then what do we do in terms of resilience? And I think with that population, I think of my mom. My mom lives in a 55 or better community. And every week they used to have their 11 by 17 calendar, right, of all the activities that they could participate in. And so I think we can really help that population by encouraging activity, whatever that activity is going to be, really doesn't matter. But is it intentional? Is it committed? And can we follow through? So if you want to be helpful to the elders in your life right now, find some way to connect to them, commit to that connection. It's going to be really, really valuable to them.
Awesome. Jeremy, we're jumping over to you.
Mhm.
What are your recommended skills for parents who are working to balance love and support versus discipline and accountability during COVID?
Yeah, this, dealing with the pandemic has been exhausting for a lot of parents because they're having to be, teachers as they're trying to help their kids through online schooling. So one of the first things for parents is to have, good self-care. You can't have a lot of patience for somebody if you're just exhausted, So as far as the offering love, that piece of it, you want to be able to give that energy forward, but you're going to have some ability to go ahead and find ways creatively to have downtime. That's not easy if you're in a house with a lot of kids and it's noisy. So things that people don't think of that are just really simple can actually be having, like noise canceling headphones or just like wax earplugs, just to be able to get into like a bedroom by yourself, find different things for you to wind down, and just to be able to de-stress. So then you have the energy to go forward and be able to give to your children. Now, when it comes to discipline, there's a few basics that you want to go and follow when you're trying to have that structure and consistency daily with the kids. When they're acting out, try to redirect them. When they're having misbehaviors, sometimes you can get them to go ahead and focus on something else, especially when you have really little ones and they're trying to learn all those boundaries and rules that you're creating for them, as their parent. For you, take a deep breath in a moment to be able just to bring your fight or flight response down because you're stressed and you could just overreact and yell. So really just taking a deep breath in, filling those lungs really full and pausing and exhaling can allow you to have a lot more grace for your kids instead of just reacting and going forward in that moment. Some other things, you can give your kids creative consequences, so if they have an infraction, you could just put them in timeout, or you could, make something to undo the infraction. Say they were rude to their brothers or sisters, or broke a rule. You could make them do a little cleaning in their brother's or sister's bedroom, or if they're really little, you got to give them a hug. There's things to be able to kind of to not just have a timeout, and it allows variability and variety and consequences to keep them interested, because you're in this confined space if you're on lockdown, and people get bored really easy. Reward good behaviors. So all those moments when your kid's doing some great thing, they helped you wash the dishes dry, they just picked up one of their toys, they said something nice to their sibling, like, make sure you point those out. And one of the final things is you can ignore poor behaviors. So you kind of do those, you balance that out. Really notice the good behaviors, really build it up. And if you have a child that's trying to just annoy purposely, just, that's when the earplugs and the noise canceling headphones come in handy. And you use those in that moment.
Sure. Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy.
Mhm.
Dr. Schoof, I'm going to jump on over to you. Next question is, can you talk about individuals who struggle with ADHD during the pandemic and how we can best support them?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. That's a really good question. We have a lot of kids that have ADHD that are really struggling, especially if you have this kiddo that is struggling with impulsivity, hyperactivity, and otherwise inattention. During virtual school, this is near impossible for these children. So keeping, especially if you have a kiddo in virtual school, keeping a kiddo as close to a structure, close to a routine that you can, mimic exactly as much as you can what the school was doing. Talk with their teachers, see what was helping them in school. Children with ADHD are going to thrive on routine, and they're really going to do better when they have predictability and consistency. So just keeping them on a routine, making sure that when school is school is school is school, and especially virtually, and when they have recess time, put them outside, take them for a recess. It's not just a time to be off of the computer virtual school, go outside like you would at school normally.
Sure. Okay, great. I have another question that I'm going to pose to you, Dr. Schoof. It's how can you best adjust materials for individuals with intellectual disabilities and are also non-communicative with other mental health concerns?
I think every day is going to be different for these kiddos, especially if there's this special education kiddo that isn't able to be in the classroom. That is going to be the best bet for those children, is being with their teachers, again, with the routine that I talked about, just with the ADHD or the kiddos with ADHD. But really, every single day is going to be different. So meet that child where they're at. Do not try to expect that kiddo to do something that they did yesterday, even if they did it yesterday, because today might be a different day. So then just structuring, have a plan for what they're supposed to be doing. But if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. Back off and then readjust, abort operation, so to speak.
Great. All right, Jeremy, I'm going to jump back over to you. Next question is, college students living in a dorm room alone with the influences of social media are concerning to me. Do you think that this is a phase or our new reality?
Well, unfortunately, social media can be a negative thing when it's done too much, or what content, I mean, this is probably an older teenager by this point or a young adult. You kind of, if you're not to that age group yet and you're into the early teens, I mean, it's never too early to start talking about being online, talking about some safety concerns about being online. So if we're looking at a college age, young adult here, I mean, as the parent, maybe pull them aside and just kind of say, I want to kind of see, you're living in such a different time than I did. I just want to kind of learn a little bit about your world with social media, ask them what sites they're on, have them kind of describe why they're going on the sites. A lot of young adults really just connect that way. That's just how they speak and interact. But maybe talk to them about if your young adult is struggling with a lot of anxiety, maybe say, well, are you on a lot of news feeds that are really bringing in a lot of, concerning topics? Are you just taking that in constantly and driving up your anxiety levels? Talk to them about safety, even though they're young adults. Talk to them about if they're online dating safety. Make sure they know about scams. It's amazing to me how many teens will get caught in people trying to get money from them, because some of them are not savvy. So have some of these conversations with them. There's a lot of great resources online. The World Health Organization has got all kinds of resources about dealing with COVID right now and parenting. So they have this 15-page guide that's on there, and I can send the link out for access. But this particular booklet has a whole section for teens and older teens and younger adults, just about internet safety, and it has other age ranges as well. But if you notice that you're at home or at college, if your young adult is on their phone constantly, there are ways to track that. A lot of new phones have ways to go ahead and see how long are you on social media. And a lot of the teens or young adults I work with, or even middle-aged and older adults, are shocked at how many hours they are putting in on that phone. And so sometimes just the awareness can really help them kind of rein it in and set a lower goal and say, I don't want to be on the phone 9 hours on Saturday. I want to be down to just maybe an hour total. So sometimes education is one of the best prevention measures.
Awesome. Thank you. Karen, I'm going to scoot back over to you. This next question is, how can I set healthy boundaries with schedules?
Oh, how can I set healthy boundaries with schedules? Well, first, I guess I'd clarify and say a schedule is a boundary. So when we talk about boundaries, really, we're talking about how do we set up, they're not meant to be necessarily restrictions, right? They're meant to be clear, unmoving, things that communicate where we are, where we want to be. So when it comes to schedules, I'm just going to assume for this discussion that we're talking like a family schedule of how we're going to do things. So remembering that schedules are also boundaries. So kind of the rules then of setting up boundaries with other people. So number one, you want to kind of define what is the issue at hand, or what is the reason that we need this. Then you kind of want to communicate, right, or gather information to figure out what kind of boundary do we want or need. So what's going to need to be happening. And I think probably in families, the best thing, kind of like Jeremy was talking about, you really need to communicate really and get the feedback and input from the people who are going to be involved in whatever that boundary or schedule is going to be. So if the kids are home and they're saying, wait, we should be allowed to be on this device for this amount of time, you want to hear them so that they have input and buy-in, that they know they were considered when the schedule or the boundary was set. You want to be real simple and clear. Don't make it complicated, because other people then can't understand, right, what the boundaries are. So you got to be real simple about it. And if it's a schedule, maybe we have a particular app we use. I know a lot of people who've got like the shared calendar apps and things like that. Or maybe we're more visual and we just got the one on the fridge, right? And everybody knows when they have to write in what they're doing or what color something is. But try and keep it as simple as possible. And then try and remember that boundaries or schedules or adherence to things doesn't need to, and probably doesn't work as well if you set it up as if this, then that, or if not this, then that. You don't necessarily need a consequence, but you need to understand the outcome. So what's the good news about why the boundary or schedule would be helpful? This is why we're doing this, is the why question is answered, right? So it doesn't have to be a threatening if-then statement. It can be an if-then, look what we get statement. So if we're going to be more organized about our schedule and set up these boundaries together as a family, we get less arguments, we get more dedicated time together, we get, this is what we get. Hopefully that answered that question a little bit.
Thank you. Dr. Schoof, this one's for you. How can a grandparent help their grandchildren and support them, especially during a pandemic?
Well, during a pandemic, we've had to be kind of isolated away from our families, so then missing, my own children miss their grandparents, their great grandparents often. So we just do a simple phone call, connect with them, ask them, but make that, I think we talked about it earlier. Karen answered that question earlier, where if you're going to commit to a phone call time, do that time every week so that those kiddos can look forward to that. You can help through any issues that moms or dads were talking about, or anything like that. But I think communication and just keeping the lines of communication open. If you can get to a video format through kind of like what we're doing now through Zoom or Skype or Facebook Live, or anything that you can get video would be very helpful too, so that kids, especially younger kids, can connect who they're talking to.
Very helpful. Thank you. Let's see, Karen, we're going to jump back over to you. Any tips on how to handle situations when an authority figure is not respectful?
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I could use a lot more information to discuss that, but I think for time's sake, what I'll say is let's assume that we don't have any sort of, let's say, illegalities or safety concerns, right? We're just going to say it's disrespectful. So I think this gives us an opportunity to talk about what we would do and also what God would have us do. We do have authority for reasons and for order, and so we want to be in our fourth commandment mind, respecting elders and things like that. But on the flip side, we sometimes have to deal with people who maybe are struggling to maintain what they're supposed to do without some sort of power differential playing into it. But we are in that spot. So to me, it's always, you have a couple of choices. There might be ways to look at it and see if there's something solvable. Okay, is there anything I can do? Is this a person I can speak to, or is there another person I can speak to say, hey, this is a problem. What can we do to solve it? And then there's kind of the idea of, well, what am I here to do? I'm here to get through whatever relationship we have, if it's a job relationship or a family relationship. So sometimes I'm going to put aside how I feel and just get through it, because that's the more effective thing for the moment. And then there's always the submission or acceptance sort of part of it. to say, I don't know that there's anything I can change, and I don't know that I can always just get through it. So I do have to come with a mindset that says, this is just how it's going to be. And how do I make the most? What is my role in making the most of the situation? So kind of, to navigate, what are you able to do versus what do you have to kind of just accept and do your best with? Does that make sense? I hope.
Yes. Thank you. It's a difficult question to answer without a whole lot of context. So thank you. I appreciate it. Dr. Schoof, we're going to jump back to you. How can I motivate a defiant preteen?
Ah, it's a good one too. So when you're handling teenagers, pre-teenagers, children, really your bottom line thing that you really need to focus on is connection. How do you get this kiddo to do what you want them to do? You connect with them. If they want to play video games and you don't want them to play video games, play 5 minutes of the video game, sit next to them, say, oh, cool character. Like just connect with them. Find something that they like to do. They're gonna listen to the adults that they feel care about them and are connected to way more. It's the basis for a trust-based relational kind of intervention is really develop that connection and empowerment there.
Awesome. Jeremy, this one is all about connection, actually.
Segue.
Exactly. This question is, would you please speak to the connection between spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical wellness?
Yeah, you could spend another 30 minutes on this one because they are just all interconnected. I mean, it's unbelievable. Think about, when you've been really sad and you feel that in your body. I mean, you feel grief, you feel like heartache. That's where the term, heartache. Or think about when you're extremely happy, you feel like you're going to explode. All these descriptions for how, we're connected. Working with trauma clients, you see so many physical symptoms pop up because it's trying to deal with underlying pain. And you look at our faith helps us get through any difficult circumstances. You have to pull that in and be able to rely on God's word and say, well, no matter what I'm feeling in a moment, what does God's word say? How does it strengthen me, build me up? How does it remind me that in good and bad situations that we're in his hands? He's guiding us, he loves us. And he's watching over us even during tough times. When you think of physical needs, you're not going to be able to very easily study for a test or do online homework and schooling or parent your children if you're exhausted and sleepy, if you are not eating well and you have low blood sugar, if you're not de-stressing by exercising in some way. The whole past year, I've just been amazed by how many possible avenues we have to exercise on with all this online stuff. You can go to YouTube and find anything. You can find, relaxation things such as like Tai Chi. Yeah, you can find there's tons of stuff. I mean, you can say, I want to do beginning yoga, hundreds of videos on yoga. You could, I want to get to some crazy goal. I want to be able to do 100 push-ups, in 90 days. And there's always these challenges you can do. So there are a lot of ways just to keep your body healthy, and it allows everything else to flow. But really the primary thing to start with is start being in God's word and connect with other believers. And that kind of everything kind of blossoms from that.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Karen, this was a question that we got an awful lot of people wanting to know just kind of how we view this and what we do to help individuals with this. So the question is, does our counseling team refer individuals to a psychiatrist or a medication prescriber when it appears that medication is needed? And at what point is medication typically needed to restore an individual's mental health?
Yeah, great question. So on behalf of the agency, I would say that we do that. It's definitely a part of what Jeremy was just talking about too, the physical and mental connection. And so God's given us some extra tools and medication, just like he does for other illnesses. And we want to be able to steward that appropriately. So yes, we do have the ability within our agency that our clients can be referred for medication management, either within our agency or without. Sometimes they come to us already with a psychiatrist and we can work with that person. We're not necessarily going to switch them over, but to have a release to talk with that psychiatrist or prescriber would be important too. For me, typically when I'm working with clients, the major reason that I'm going to recommend that is when we've got a lot of things that are interfering or we're not making progress. So, and number one usually is going to be a red flag about sleep. The minute that we can't get that sleep to be a little bit more regulated, we will see other things. And so if that's not improving just with the therapeutic techniques, a lot of times that's the first line of defense then to say to me, I don't think we're getting where we need to be. If we got that sleep to work a little better, these other things might fall in line. And then also with certain diagnoses, there are certain diagnoses where the medication is just required and it's a lifesaver and it needs to happen. So definitely something that we work with everybody on.
Very helpful to know. Thank you, Karen. Just for time's sake, I'm going to jump to another question that we had a lot of people curious about. So Dr. Schoof, this one I have down for you.
Mhm.
And the question is, how can we care for teens in a COVID world? When do we need to seek professional help? And what programs are available to help them?
Sure. A really good question. 3-parter. My goodness. Okay.
Big
The
one.
first part of that question, teens during a COVID world, they are so used to going to school to learn, yes, but really they're going to school as a social outlet. That is where their friends are. That's where their buddies are. So then when we have in a COVID world, we're pulling that back and we're saying, no, you cannot interact with your friends and buddies. We're seeing the effects of that pretty significantly, I'd say. Children, teenagers are isolating, pulling back, and it's just not a good thing. The Lord said, that is not good for man to be alone. Boy, is that the truth. So, I think our teenagers especially are feeling that. You'll have to remind me the other parts of that question, Ms. Bree.
Yes, definitely. When is it time for us to seek professional help?
Yeah, so when you start to see that your kiddo isn't even interacting with their family, if they're not interacting with their family, if they're wanting to stay asleep, if especially they're doing virtual school and their grades are starting to fall and they're normally a good student, if they don't want to do their school, anything, seriously, parents know their kiddos the best, anything out of the ordinary. I wouldn't wait too long with that. Teenagers aren't generally going to tell you a whole bunch anyway. So looking at the tiny little subtle signs might be the tipping point already. So parents, don't wait on that. Get into some programming, which leads me to that third part of the question. There are a couple different mental health levels of care that we have available to us. Specifically at Christian Family Solutions, we offer a couple of different levels of care. The first of those being an outpatient level of care. And all of the stuff I think you mentioned, Bree, that we can find on our website. Mm-hmm. But an outpatient level of care, that's going to be meeting with a counselor once a week or so. That's generally a good place to start. That person's going to be able to look at the diagnostic information and look at the presenting issues and really recommend a good treatment plan. That treatment plan may or may not include a higher level of care, just depending on the presenting symptoms. That higher level of care could look like day treatment. Day treatment is about 3 hours a day, 4 or 5 times a week. So it is a higher dose of mental health treatment that we are looking at, but oftentimes it's easier to do some outpatient treatment if you've done that level of care in day treatment before that. Then you're just a little bit more ready for outpatient. So a couple of different ways in which to get some of that treatment all can be found on the website.
Thank you. Yes, and I know we are so pressed for time. We have oodles more questions that I have down from all of our folks who registered for today's talk that we just don't have time to get to, unfortunately. But that means that we will definitely consider future educational presentations and talks and panel discussions, whatever it may be down the road, because it sounds like there's still a lot of interest and questions that people have for you guys. So with that, we're going to just wrap it up for today. Thank you so much again for all of your thoughts and willingness to share your expertise with us. We really appreciate it. And thank you guys at home for joining us for this whole series. It's been a joy and pleasure to have you all. And if you're interested in learning and doing a little bit more of a deep dive in how we can help teens specifically, we have a new two-parter educational style series that will start next week, Tuesday at noon Central. And that's going to be with an expert, Caitlin Bolte, who is another one of our program managers. And you can find registration information on our website on a pop-up that'll pop up right on the side for you, where it's nice and easy access for it. So thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you all soon.